All right, today I went into a Petco to upgrade my aquarium because I need more space for underwater plants. First world problem, right? The first thing that I noticed when I walked in was how disgruntled all the employees were. I went over to ask the girl if it would be okay for me to put some shrimp or what was the other thing that I wanted, or snails into my aquarium with my beta. And she just looked at me. She gave me a scowl and she said, "No, you can't put anything in with the beta because they will kill it." And then I went back to looking at all of the stuff on the shelves. And then I went to go get a shopping cart so I could put my underwater soil and my new aquarium in my cart. Then I wheeled over to look at the birds. And what you guys saw at the beginning of this video, or I'll put it up right here so you guys can see it. This is what I was looking at. And that little guy looked as trapped as any one of us. He's got food in there, he's got water in there, but he can't leave. And neither can we. Because if you think that you can just decide that you're not going to work, you've just signed your own demise. All right, let's get into the script written from the perspective of a 25-year-old corporate worker who's burnt out and isn't making enough money to keep herself fed. Hi, I'm 25, I'm exhausted, and I've had 3 panic attacks this week, and I cried in a Taco Bell parking lot twice. Not because of a breakup, but because my debit card declined after I already opened the hot sauce. They say we're free, like economically free. You can do anything you want as long as you're back by Monday at 8 a.m. to clock in, and you don't forget to smile while serving people who treat you like belly button lint. But today, I saw this little animal at the pet store, just pacing in his cage, trying to escape, and for a second I thought, oh my god, that's me. That's us, pecking at the walls of our cubicles, typing away endlessly, and wondering if we're gonna make it to that next paycheck. It's awful. And everyone that you meet has that same look on their face. I'm not okay. And you wonder how does a society function like this? When all the pets, the corporate pets, are fed, but they're not economically free. And you never were and never will be. All right. Act 1. They don't give us cages with bars anymore. They give us benefits. A break room with stale pretzels, 2 15s, and a 30-minute lunch. And this illusion that if you just hustle hard enough, you too can own the cage. I just get enough to survive, not enough to leave. Like a pet on a feeding schedule, direct deposits hits, and suddenly I can breathe. Not because I am free, but because I'm not starving. And I mean, what is rent really? Besides paying someone richer than me for the privilege of not having to sleep on the street. Oh my gosh. I was thinking about this, and I watch Claire on the Road all the time. And last night in her episode, she was staying in a designated area for people who were living in her cars. And then she mentioned something that I didn't think I was ever going to hear on her channel. And I was actually planning on ripping this right out of her video because it seemed chaotic. Something was wrong right from the get-go. There were too many screen cuts in the video. It was spliced together. I thought I was going to have a seizure. There were so many slices. But there's one phrase in Claire's video that really stood out to me. And that's, I joined a cult and then I had to leave. Join a cult? Holy crap. I knew there was some behavior there, but she was being triggered in the car by the restrictions placed on her by this safe place for you to live in your car. And I thought to myself, in the future, greedy landlords are going to have to make certain that it is very illegal to live in your car. Just like you're not allowed to live in a storage unit, your car is going to be designated as unsafe for you to live in. You're not going to be allowed to live permanently in an RV on private land. Like where I work, there's always some RV on that street. Always. And you ask yourself, why isn't anyone pushing them out of the way? Because the system doesn't work if you're not working. You have to be working in order to pay that greedy landlord for the privilege of not existing anymore while in your tiny little cage. In fact, today, while I was at Kroger's, one of the cashiers came up to me and told me that she was being evicted in 2 weeks. And I said to her, oh my God, that sounds terrible. And at the same time, in the same conversation, she changed the subject and she asked me, Millennial Steam, I have this neighbor of mine. He's a really old guy that lives across from me in the apartment complex that I live in. And I haven't seen any movement in his apartment for 2 weeks. What should I do? And I thought to myself, she thinks that his cage has become his tomb. And I wasn't sure what to say. Leaving the parking lot, I thought I should go over with her and we could just walk over and knock and just make sure he's good in there. Because at my last apartment complex, during COVID, they found 2 people that no one loved in their apartment. And these 2 people were being, consumed. And the only reason why the apartment complex found out that there was something wrong with that tenant, because they had their rent on auto pay, was the fact that the neighbors around them started complaining about an odd odor. And I can't tell you guys what that is, but you know. And that's what she thought. She told me she walks past his apartment on the way to the dog park every night, and it's like no one's there. I mean, there's a chance he could have gone on vacation, but anyone that lives in that apartment complex isn't going on any vacations. All right, off on a major tangent. Here we go, back on track. You ever quit a job with no backup plan? It's cute for like 48 hours. Then suddenly that feeling of freedom starts to rot. Because guess what? No job means no money. No money means no housing. No housing means no sleep. And no sleep is the one thing you can't afford. So we stay. We stay in the cage. We post memes about how tired we are. We slap some eyeliner on it and pretend it's just the season of growth. It's not. It's survival with Wi-Fi. I never thought about it. But as a former homeless person, I'll tell you, not being indoors makes sleeping very hard. And this is the advice that I give anyone that's going to be on the street for any prolonged period of time. As a homeless person, you figure out very quickly that nighttime is not your friend. Nighttime is the most dangerous part of being a homeless person. And the one thing you want to do at night is stay awake, stay aware, and make certain that you try to stay awake as much of the time that you can. Even if you go to a place and you feel like you're well hidden, people show up everywhere. There's one particular night where I was hiding in this room, in a storage room, and I was sleeping, and at about 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 guys came out of nowhere and started screaming at the top of their lungs, and all I did was hope that they wouldn't be able to see me in the darkness. But that's when you know that no matter where you go, other humans are going to be there too. Because it's nearly impossible to find a space in this world anymore where there aren't other people. And when you're on the street, that becomes a challenge. Because nighttime, if you're going to bite it as a homeless person, chances are it's going to happen at night. And chances are it's going to come from your fellow proles. All right. Third act. Economic freedom. That's for people who already had money. I can't afford to dream. I can barely afford milk. But you know what's wild? They tell us it's our fault. If you're broke, it's because you didn't work hard enough. Meanwhile, billionaires are out here building. No way, ChatGPT. Building phallic shaped rockets and calling it innovation. You know the words it chose, and I can't say those words on this platform. I work 2 jobs, I eat rice and eggs every night, and I still can't afford to be free. I'm the animal in the cage, the one they feed just enough so that you don't complain. But guess what? I've learned how to rattle the bars. Ooh, I'm excited for this ending, guys. Remember, I don't ever read these scripts first, so I'm kind of curious what ChatGPT is going to give us because I am truly intrigued. Because the building of phallic shaped rockets is something that I never imagined that it would incorporate into one of these hundreds of scripts that have had it read for me. But it did it. It went there. I was starting to wonder why everything I write eventually comes down to can't afford tampons. So far, there's not one mention of that in this one. All right, let's see what it put into the conclusion. So no, we're not free. We're not lazy either. We're tired, we're smart, and we see the cage now. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So if you're watching this from your own little enclosure, just know you're not alone. The pets are waking up, and maybe one day won't just rattle the cage, we'll tear it down. Ooh, that's exciting. Well, I was talking to that person the other day, the office worker with the green toes. She said something that I found very unexpected. I don't know how this came up. I don't remember the context of what led us to talk about this, but it must have been something after the green toenails, which I keep. If I close my eyes, I can see 10 perfectly circle dark green toenails. Odd thing. But anyhow, in that conversation, she said, "You know what, Millennial Sting? The French know how to revolt. The French know what it's really like to protest. Because these are the people that no matter what their government does, they're out there burning cars in the streets. And these are the people that took matters into their own hands. The French don't take any crap. Americans seem to have gotten soft. I don't see the kinds of social upheaval. But guess what? In France, even a coffee house worker gets paid enough money to be able to own their own home. That is something that hasn't existed in this country for decades. You could be a well paid person. And by well paid, I'm using air quotes. You can work as hard as you can in this country and never own anything nice. Example, look at my apartment. Right now, or a little while ago, while I was at Kroger's and the cashier, I asked the cashier if she was hungry or thirsty, if she wanted anything, and her eyes just brightened up because she's like, no one ever treats these people with any respect. Remember, belly button lint. So I walked up to her. We talked about all of her problems. And then I ended the conversation with, what can I get you? And she asked me for a tea. So I went over. I bought her a tea along with all the rest of my crap, right? Enough booze to make a small buffalo fall over dead. And I handed her two teas. One for now and one for after work. And at that point, I asked her if she needed anything else. And in her eyes, she said, Millennial Steam, I don't have enough money to get drunk tonight. So I took $20 back in cash back, And I was going to hand her the $20 and tell her, it's like, I know what it's like to work here. I've worked here. I've stood where you're working for 8 hours at a time. I know what it feels like not to be able to leave. And she just looked at me just with amazement. Because these people may be essential, but people treat them as if they don't matter. And you begin to internalize not mattering. And that's why when I had that conversation with that office worker the other day, the entire conversation was based on the fact that she knew she didn't matter. That those people, the people that she passes in the hallway, the people she sees every day, the people she works for, they don't see a human being. They see a machine that serves them. And when they don't need her anymore, they're going to quietly put her in the trash. And she knows that. She's well aware of it, almost to a point where it's eerie. I've never had a normie tell me that they felt that way, especially not a normie at that high of a level. A person whose job it is to serve the elite. For a normie to become self-aware of how low she is in the world is very rare. In fact, lots of the things that she said to me are very rare to find in normies. And I remember ending the conversation with saying that you are very good at speaking. I mean, very rarely do I encounter someone who has a lot of valid points in a conversation in the span of 30 minutes where I'm running in and out of the office, because I too am like her. I serve my corporate masters, right? And I'm not seen as a human being in their eyes. I'm just a cashier. When ordinary people encounter me, or they encounter this girl standing in a Kroger's, tired, angry, and broke, they don't see us. I've literally had cashiers come up to me and say people would walk right through us. We're so invisible. Or the fact that in reality, they are so invisible that people try to push right through them. Like actually push them out of the way to walk out of the store. And I've seen that too. Where you're talking to someone and they just look at you like, oh, you're stupid because you work in a grocery store. Or you're stupid because you're poor. It always comes down to it's your fault for being too stupid to be rich. I've never understood that mentality. And when I handed her her tea today, the last thing I said to her is, I know what it's like to work here. I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to not have anyone care. Because for the most part, we're all going to work until they put us 6 feet down. And that's going to be the end of us. And before I end this video, I got this part. At the end of this script, ChatGPT added this. And I think it's part of the script, but it said, cut to a satirical pet adoption ad with stock footage of office workers. For just $15 an hour, you can keep a millennial off the streets. Call now. Ouch. Who are you calling? You're calling Walmart, Target, Amazon, any large corporation that has entry-level crap jobs. You too can keep a millennial off the street. That's one of the saddest endings that I've ever seen. Keeping your workers off the street and just barely with enough energy. Pay them just enough so that they can keep coming to work, and you can chain them to their desk or chain them to a cash register or chain them inside of a warehouse. Wherever you need that labor, you're going to chain them to that job, and you're only going to release them at 5 o'clock. Only so that they have to go out and find another source of revenue.